call to order our Architectural Board
Recording in
Review
progress.
agenda for May 2nd of 2022, and start with a roll call, please.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and take roll call. So today we have Chair Moore.
Here.
Vice Chair Six is absent. Board Member Anderson.
Here.
Board Member Black.
Here.
Board Member Noon.
Here.
Board Member Olson.
Here.
And Board Member Whalen is also absent, and we have a quorum today. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we can move on to public comment. Any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject that is not on today's agenda. Do we have anybody?
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. So today will be the first day that we're doing hybrid public comment. So I'll go ahead and start with the remote public commenters. So if any member of the public joining by Zoom would like to speak on an item not on today's agenda, please raise your hand to indicate that you would like to speak, and I will call on you. So I can see one person has raised their hand. Miss Anna Marie Gott, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and you should have 2 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, board members. I just want to remind you of a few things about your ABR guidelines. Your ABR guidelines actually are not binding. So if you don't follow your ABR guidelines, that's okay. That includes any comments that you make regarding an application. While staff might direct you to only comment on certain aspects of a project, you actually have leeway to make decisions and comment that do not follow the ABR guidelines. So in cases where you believe that a project substantially has issues that you feel need to be addressed, please do make those comments and have them in the written record so that you, other board members, other commissions, and the city council are well aware of your concerns regarding a project. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I don't see any more hands raised for general public comment, so I'll go ahead and move on to in-person public comment. I haven't received any speaker slips, and we did not receive any written correspondence, so I'll turn it over back to you.
Okay, to be clear, is anyone in the audience interested in addressing the board at this time? Nope. Okay, then we'll close public comment and go on to approval of the minutes from April 18th. If we could have those up.
I move we accept as presented.
All right, I'll second that. Any discussion? Nope. Okay, we can take our vote.
All right, I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen is absent, so motion passes.
Okay, and then the consent calendar for May 2nd today.
Thank you,
Those
Chair
up?
Moore. We had 3 items today on consent. The first item, item A, 116 East Coda Street, received final approval. It was a review after final for heaters. Item B, 2 South Quarantina, proposal for final approval. Final approval was granted as submitted. And then last but not least, item C, 3888 State Street. Excuse me, I think I mixed up my consent items. The first one, the last one was the one approving heaters. And this also received final approval or review after final approval. So that was all on consent today. Thank you.
Move we accept as presented. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Nope. Okay, let's vote.
Thank you. So we have Chair Moore,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
and Board Member Olson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Any announcements by staff?
Just want to reiterate that we will be doing Zoom public comment, so just accommodate that first and then in-person speaker slips, so.
Okay, thank you. Any requests by applicants for continuances, withdrawals, future agenda items from the board? Any suggestions?
Chair Moore,
Yes.
I have to step down for item 1.
Okay, thank you. And any subcommittee reports? Nope. Okay. Well, then we can move on to item 1. We have our applicant. How's it working? Okay. Oh, yeah, can you? That's awesome. So this is a continued item here for concept review. It's 414 West Cannon Perdido Street. And the proposed project is a 2-story, 2-unit residential building using the average unit size density program. The project includes 2 932 square foot bedroom units. The proposed density on the 3,529 square foot lot is 25 units per acre. The proposal also includes 2 covered parking spaces in a 448 square foot garage. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing, and this was last reviewed on February 22nd of this year. Welcome back,
Thank you.
in person this time.
Yeah, it's different.
So try to speak into the microphones as best as you can,
I will.
and
Lauren's got the control.
take us through your changes. Actually, before you jump in, let's take a look at the motion from last time. Just to remind ourselves. Okay, so continue indefinitely with comments. Study ways to have this design be more compatible with the neighborhood. Materials and forms. Granted that a contemporary take on those materials and forms could be acceptable, provide more examples in a broader area that might support the design. Find ways to reduce the apparent scale of the project. Show documentation of how the applicant will deal with the privacy issues with existing neighbors. Study alternate site circulation paths that keep the residents from walking on the street from their parking garage to their home entry. Okay.
Okay. So, thank Chair Moore, members of the board, thank you for having us. We spent some time walking the streets of the neighborhood and kind of documenting a lot of the existing conditions. So a lot of it, what we heard was neighborhood compatibility, some material selections. So initially, we've removed the roof deck to help reduce the scale of the home. We've also put a pitched roof on. So if we go to the next slide, we'll start to just walk through. So just coming back to that. So this is the photographs looking at the project site. Obviously little bungalows. If we go across the street, we have a number of homes that everybody commented on how beautiful they were because they didn't have their garages. The garages all actually face the opposite street, which I'll have photographs of. So while they've maintained this street facade, the other neighboring facades are certainly compromised. So if we go to the next street. So we did a full walk. So looking the 2 top photos, what the project looks down upon. So we have basically just 2 roof forms and an alley. There's no yard space between these 2 buildings. The image to the right can be seen as the entrance to the back units. So it's basically just a storage location and an area for transition to the back buildings. So then we canvassed the street looking at some of the other existing conditions that we have. A new project that was approved a few years ago, drive-in garages because of the floodplain, no internal access to the unit, actually walks outside. And as we walk down Cannon Perdido Street, we have large number of multi-family units, all with parking in the rear or requiring everybody to walk to their unit. Looking at the scale of the units, kind of overbearing the little bungalows beside it. As we come down Castillo Street, they've broken up the massing with the garage by breaking it into two. This project, again, like I said, has no internal access, but does have a roof deck, which we've proposed on removing. That roof deck looks down over the multifamily units beside it. As we come down, what I did discover during the street tour is that the feel of the neighborhood is very urban. It's very large numbers of families. Most of the parking is either on the street or in a rear parking lot where people walk to their units. Some of the additional neighborhood images, these are all the garages on the street, on Transfer Street, that are addressing the buildings to the front of Canon Perdido. So what we have is, again, a lot of multifamily units parking in an open garage. There's a carport area to the unit on that lower one right there, Lauren, if you can move your cursor down and over. Perfect. And then, it has a very urban feel. The buildings are all on top of each other. There's a high density of units within this neighborhood. If we go to the next slide. Go back for me. So what we did was as we removed the roof deck and the parapet heights for what we've been allowed to do is reduce the massing of that building down to something that I'm hoping will be more acceptable to everybody moving forward. Site analysis, which was seen. We looked again at that interior access. It wasn't going to work very well, so what we're proposing is a path through the rear courtyard around the back for access into the units. There's not necessarily a need to come out onto the street, but we felt that we've kept the facade to the west very quiet. It's the entry location, but very much quiet for the neighbor on the west side. So we keep going. And we can start to see the reduction of scale as we did the little elevation study beside us. The floor plans haven't changed, but we did obviously put a gable roof form. We kept the roof for the solar location and just added a skylight over the stair, removing the full access to the roof. By doing that, we've also met the sun angles for the neighborhood property lines clearly underneath it. So then the other element that we looked at when we did our site walk was really the scale of the windows, and there was concern. We had much, much larger windows. We've looked at the scale of the windows in the larger historic homes around the neighborhood that are peppered still in. They all have a very much a vertical orientation, which we've kept, and have good windows, obviously looking at the street, and having a mountain view, and then the rear unit having a good view over the backyard. And then, we can go back to the section. And so just looking at the section, we've kept all our plates to a minimum. So we've got 8-foot ceilings in the lower level and in the bedroom level before we only open up to a vaulted space in the living room to be able to create that volume, that kind of loft type feel. And then materiality, we've looked at a plaster and wood siding. There's a prominent of horizontal wood siding. We'd like to go vertical with that wood siding to bring that element, so at least the palette talks to the neighborhood. And then work with a colored CMU block for the garage unit. And then we just put a quick little study rendering together, which just kind of shows how it sits in relationship. So questions?
Okay, if that concludes your presentation, we can open public comment for this item. If there's anybody.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So I'll go ahead and start with virtual public comment. So if any member of the public would like to speak on item 1 on today's agenda, please raise your hand to indicate that you'd like to speak, and I will call on you. All right, so I don't see any hands raised on Zoom for this item, so I'll go ahead and move on to in-person public comment. If any member of the public would like to speak on this item, please fill out a speaker slip by the back door and bring it to me. So I don't see any requests to speak, and we did not receive any written correspondence, so I'll turn it over back to you.
Okay, thank you. And we close public comment and move on to questions from the board. Who would like to start? Mr. Olson?
Sure. I think one of the discussions last time was the use of stucco,
Yes.
and you haven't used any stucco on this project. Would you?
We're actually looking at the whole block being stucco, the coloured block being a stucco form with the wood siding on the pitched form.
Maybe I'm not understanding. So would you show me again which areas you think are going to be stucco?
The whole bedroom wing, this portion.
Uh-huh.
Basically, it's the whole layout was designed around two forms. We have the solid form anchoring to the ground,
Got it.
and then we have the gable form that's floating.
And then you also stucco the east side of the garage?
The east side will be the CMU block.
Uh-huh.
So three materials.
Okay. And the roofing material?
We're looking at a corrugated Corten steel.
That's all my questions for now.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yes, thank you. Can you address the comment of just the concern over the privacy to adjacent properties? How you?
So we reduced the size of the windows to that east facade, and then what we're looking onto, if we go back to those original photos, we're effectively looking onto a roof form and the entry to one of the units, which has a shade structure. So we're not actually. The irony is the privacy issue is actually going to be much more of an internal one for the people in the units, which we can use with blinds, like they do throughout. Like I said, it's a very urban feeling location, more so than I actually imagined when I hadn't done the walk around.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could you reiterate how you responded to the neighborhood character as far as what you're showing us today, specifically the elements?
Yeah, so the major form of the home, the white vertical sided, is a gable-ended roof, which we see on all the small cottages in the neighborhood. The balance of it is made up of flat-roofed multifamily, so I was balancing those two elements, bringing those together, and letting the taller of those elements, pushing the flat roof section down as low as I can to get it incompatible with some of the neighborhood. The second is using that gable end as the language that's kind of sitting up against the street.
So, maybe this is an unfair question. So how would you describe the architectural character of the building that you've designed here? If you had to put a...
Yeah, I put a label on it.
Yeah, I mean...
It's a I would call it a modern interpretation of a traditional cottage.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing too.
Yeah.
Okay, no other questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any follow-up questions before we go to comments? No? Okay. Mr. Olson, do you want to lead us off?
So I was the lone dissenter the last time when this came before us. I thought the project, as was presented at that time, was expressive and had the earmarks of good architecture, and so I felt like to make major changes in this, well, I couldn't support. I do see that it doesn't blend carefully with the next door neighbors, but there are lots of versions of architecture in that neighborhood. I think this is an improvement over that, and that it perhaps will satisfy some of the criticism before. So I for one, would be for this project.
Okay. Mr. Noon, any comments?
Yeah, just brief. I appreciate the effort at addressing, the comments that we mentioned of scale and see the reduction, the gable and just the overall mass. I still struggle a little bit with the compatibility, but I guess I'd like to see the rest of the boards. I'm not saying it's I wouldn't accept it, because I do see it, it can concede to some of the other efforts. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Mr. Black?
I'd agree with those comments. I just. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Just as it relates to the character of the immediate neighborhood, it seems a little stripped down to me in terms of architectural detail. I'm just wondering whether there's something that could be done to just kind of finesse it a little bit, just character-wise. I mean, the size, bulk, and scale, it's probably acceptable to me, but it's just a little too contemporary in my mind. That's all. Maybe it's just some of the details, the materials, the lack of an eave, kind of, well, those kinds of things. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to actually take a step back and ask a question. So the cantilevered corner, is that something that's required just because of your clearance issues at the garage or the carport?
Yeah, so form follows parking. And like we talked about when we first presented the project, the absolute minimum depth that we could get the parking drives the location of the garage. And then to get the units to work on the site to get our open space requirements. So once you start to overlay all those elements, it starts to drive the building forward. So the other thing is, by driving the building forward, we're from a neighborhood compatibility standpoint, we are starting to look at how they addressed all those houses in the neighborhood. They all pushed forward to that front setback. So that's where that got derived out of. Again, we wanted to get a bedroom on the ground floor so that we kept the massing down. A lot of those old, 60s apartments have all the parking in, and then they raised a podium. We tried to kind of balance getting a 2-bedroom unit to work, and that's where that piece anchors in the front. So it's derived around the parking setback and the garage location.
So the area where it says driveway,
Yes.
that's outside of the parking area?
Yeah, you're required to have the 20 feet to be able to park in front of the garage space as well as the 20-foot.
Okay. All right. So, sorry for the follow-up question. If we could flip to the elevations again. I think, one of Mr. Black's comments about the detailing aspect of it, it's kind of an interesting part of this project, where I can see, that something like this could be successful as a play on those traditional forms and materials. So I think, I think the mass bulk and scale, I think, is fine. It's compatible with the neighborhood. I think that's, the changes that you've made have definitely helped that and solved that issue. So I'm wondering if there's just some move that you could do on that front facade with the gable end to have a little bit more of a nod towards that, what's in the neighborhood. I don't think it needs to be drastic. I think it can be done subtly. Maybe it's just a change in the direction of the boards in some locations, or some sort of nod to the context. I think would be, then I think you're there. So, because I think it's an inventive way to get, some needed density on this site in downtown. So I think so. Those are my comments. So I don't know if that, Mr. Noon, you seem to be looking for some input from everybody else. What are your thoughts at this point?
Yeah, no, I appreciate, again, I failed to mention it, that you expanded your, your coverage to try to make this work. I remember making the comment last time. I said, I want this to work. Just, convince us. And so I don't think, although you expanded it, I don't know that it made the argument as, as solid as maybe it needed to, but I think it is in the right direction. I would agree with the other comments. Just a little refinement of detail would probably help.
If I can make a comment too, I think you can probably communicate it better with your rendering, showing a little bit more of the materials, because it's pretty stripped down now, and that's kind of gives it that. So I think if you can, in your renderings, you can show the materials that sort of sell this a little bit better.
Yep.
So that's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
No, we need a motion, so you have something official to work with. So this was continued for concept review. It can't receive project design approval at this point. So it would be a continuation regardless. And the question to staff, that's because the review process is still underway? Okay. It's not complete yet?
The applicant wished to come back for continued concept, so that was on their discretion.
Okay. So a motion would start with, I'll make a motion. So I'll move that project shall return to full board for continued conceptual review with the following comments: that the board appreciates the design direction and changes that were made to reduce the mass, bulk, and scale of the neighborhood, or in relation to the neighborhood, as well as the modification of the cantilevered element to introduce a more traditional roof form. Okay, and then the board suggests the following not changes, but refinements. That the applicant should study including small details that can be found throughout the immediate neighborhood to the facade, to study the materials as presented. And then I'll take any thoughts.
Should we address, since it was a comment last time, that the privacy issue, that we felt that is, so it doesn't come back on them, that we felt that their response to the privacy
Okay.
is acceptable.
Yeah. The photos of the neighboring and adjacent properties were helpful to determine that there are no privacy conflicts between these neighbors. Obviously, we want to see some landscape design. Return with conceptual landscape design and further developed details. Anything else? Hold on. Anything else?
I'll second it. No questions.
Okay. Any discussion? Anything to add to help guide the applicant?
I don't have anything to add to it. I will oppose a motion. I think it's ready to move to the next step. And with all due respect, it just seems like what we're doing here is messing with the architect and the architecture. And I just don't know how we encourage responsible architecture, and then for us to sort of guess, you ought to move this over there and move that over there. And it feels like that's what we're doing here. So for that reason, I'd oppose the motion.
Okay. I guess I would counter that with, we need to be responsible to the neighborhood and making sure that the project is complying with the guidelines and is, trying to be compatible in some form. So I think that's what the motion is trying to communicate and get at. So I understand your sentiment, though.
And now yours.
Okay. Okay, you had a question.
Just a processing question for staff. So our intent was to come back for further conceptual review, and then while we were wrapping up all the elements for the PDA, so then we would be eligible to come back for planning approval, for approval.
I'm not quite sure I follow. So you guys have postponed going back through the 30-day review cycle with this new design, or I don't remember if I put it through that distribute the mail process. So that I don't think that's happened.
Yeah.
So today I think that the direction could just be the item was continued. I think Chair wanted to come back for PDA.
Yeah.
So that's, you guys could have that discussion about the motion, but
Yeah, but isn't that dependent on whether they're
we would need to get a
review is complete?
completeness determination. So after you guys are deemed complete.
Okay.
I hope
Well,
that-
just continued indefinitely. Let's amend the motion to read the item should be continued indefinitely back to the full board. Thank you. Okay, any other discussion? And can we read that back?
Yes. So the motion was to continue indefinitely to the full board with the following comments. Number one, the board appreciates the design direction and changes made to reduce the mass, bulk, and scale of the project in relation to the neighborhood. as well as the modification of the cantilevered element to introduce a more traditional roof form. Number 2, the board suggests the following refinements. A, the applicant should study including small details that can be found throughout the immediate neighborhood to the facade. B, study the materials as presented. C, the photographs of the neighboring and adjacent properties were helpful to determine that there are no privacy conflicts between these neighbors. And D, return with a conceptual landscape design with further developed details.
Okay, does that sound correct to everybody? Yeah, okay, let's take a vote.
All right, I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
and Board Member Olson.
No.
Okay, so the motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay.
So the next item, we could potentially hear 15 minutes early, so we've got to wait like 7 minutes.
Yeah, so we're going to adjourn for 7 minutes.
We can just reconvene at 3:45.
on to item number 2. Which is a new item here for concept review, and it's 3707 State Street. And the Chick-fil-A restaurant proposes to add a canopy for the existing drive-through service window at the rear of the building, add additional vehicle lanes and new menu order boards for the drive-through, widen the entrance driveway, reconfigure the existing parking lot, including removal of 15 parking spaces, new bike racks, a new stormwater treatment system, and other site improvements. Landscaping requires consideration by the ABR of an alternative landscape design pursuant to the municipal code. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. The project requires compliance with the project compatibility findings, the urban design guidelines, and the Upper State Street Area Design Guidelines. Okay, welcome. So the way this works is that you have 15 minutes to make your presentation. We then open public comment, we then ask questions, and then we go to comments. So if you could introduce yourselves and take us through your proposal.
Perfect. Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Chair Moore. My name is Jennifer Daw, and I am the Senior Real Estate Representative for Chick-fil-A. First of all, before we begin, I do want to introduce you to my team that is here today. We have Carlos de la Vega, the architect with CRHO. We also have Matt Ezrick, who is our civil engineer with Truxall and Associates, and Nicole Hurrian with Hurrian Associates, who is our landscape architect. After I conclude this, my part of the presentation, both Carlos and Nicole will present the proposal for the architectural and landscape improvements, and then Matt will be here to answer any questions that you have on the civil treatment, as well as I am here to answer any questions regarding to Chick-fil-A. We are here today to review the proposed changes to the existing parking lot for our drive-through restaurant on State Street. The goal of this project is to improve the traffic circulation throughout the site, and also to improve the working conditions for our team members, as well as to provide a wonderful hospitality for our guests. By doing this, we are adding this new canopy and will also include better demarked drive-through lanes for our team members on the pavement, as well as Carlos will kind of talk a little bit more about that as well. The majority of the improvements are located in the rear of the site. We are minimizing the grading and maximizing the setback from the creek. And our primary ask from you today is to review the alternative landscape plan and the canopy proposed at the back of our property. I will now turn it over to Carlos as he will talk a little bit more about the site improvements, and then Nicole will follow.
Hi, this is Carlos. Well, we're proposing a canopy in the rear of the building. That will be the south side elevation. And will be a metal canopy. It is which sequence of pages. That'll be the south elevation, the number 1 figure. And also the other changes are adding metal menu boards. They'll be on the east side. This is the color board. That's the metal canopy. Yes. Okay. Actually, and these are the color elevations. We're shaded out we're not doing any changes to the building itself. It's just adding this metal canopy on the back. That's basically it.
It'd be helpful to go through the photos and really just point out what's being changed as well on the site.
We don't have any, well, these are the existing
That's what we.
These are the
that's what
existing
we need,
photos.
yeah.
Yeah. I did. Let me see. Okay. This will be the entrance of the driveway. That we are increasing the drive-through to 3 lanes to increase the capacity of the drive-through from I think it is 12 cars right now to 25. So that will help with the backup on the street. And there's another side of those renderings.
Hey, Carlos, can you go back real quick to the site plan and maybe I can help you kind of explain? Go back to the front page and we can walk them through. So let me just point out some site modifications and maybe Carlos, you can just kind of walk your arrow through as I kind of explain. So the first is Carlos's cursor is right now that is a 30-foot wide driveway entrance. And we are increasing that to about 42 feet. And by doing that, we are relocating the handicap stalls where you can see existing, and we'll show you the photos, but where cars 16 and 14 are, there's the current ADA stalls. And we are relocating those over to the, I guess that'd be plan east side of the building. And by doing that, we are shifting the dual drive-through lanes over to allow for those 2 full drive-through lanes. By doing that, we are also widening the entrance of the driveway from 30 feet to about 42 feet and creating that bypass dual lane, second or third lane, I should say, where cars 24, 23, and 22 are. So it's kind of like being like a holding pocket area for cars that if they are idling on State Street, they can come into the site. And also by doing that, we are creating that thorough lane where it says thorough lane to allow customers to come into the property as well. Where Carlos's cursor currently is, that's the canopies that were shown on the renderings. The whole idea, as I've mentioned, it's to provide that customer and guest experience, our customer experience as well as for our team members. Those canopies there are there to provide shade and to allow our team members to provide upstream delivery to the guests as they are in their cars. And then as you move to the east side at the exit, we are designing the exit driveway, forcing our customers to turn right out onto State Street. Currently, there is a sign that says no left turn, but we still have customers and people kind of try to turn left out onto State Street. So by forcing people, or by creating a driveway exit rather, by forcing people to turn right, we feel that this will also help with our operations and getting people off the lot. And then as you can see, we relocated the ADA stalls there in that area as well. That's actually kind of really our front door of the restaurant. If you talk to the operator, a lot of people actually come through that door. And so by relocating those ADA stalls there, that is now to the first accessible door for our restaurant.
I'd suggest discussing other changes to the hardscape, landscape, etc. Like what's changing on the site?
So how about I turn that over to Nicole and she can talk about the landscaping.
Good afternoon. I'm Nicole Hurrian. Going into landscape, as you know, if you're not very familiar with the project or the site, 25% of our site is naturally landscaped with the San Roque Creek pass along the east and the southern sides of the property. So it's pretty lush with the back and side landscapes. And also there's many mature trees back there, such as sycamores and eucalyptus that create a lot of shade on the east and south areas of our site. We also have a significant amount of landscape already out front. The planter out front and the 2 sides by the driveways are pretty deep to allow a variety of landscape and design to promote out front to enhance the entrance. If you want to review, we can look at the existing landscape right now. That would be photos on, I think, pages 1 and 8. So right now, the site honestly has been maintained wonderfully. What we want to do and propose is to change a lot of the ground cover to enhance the front with more strappy grass type planting so things don't get so blanket and hedged over time. As you can see, there's really no depth to the current landscape, and I feel like enhancing the front with things that could blend in with the current landscape in the back as far as adding some more grasses and strappy type plants as they do across the street in the development in the dental office over there. We can kind of blend in and enhance the whole State Street vibe and kind of start creating a landscape theme. You can also see the creek in the back. I think those are on pages 23 and 27 and 34 and 38, how dense the landscape is back there. It's kind of hard to see past the hedge that's going to stay as well, but you can see how we have a lot of existing sycamores and eucalyptus back there already that we're keeping. So all that's not going to be touched. If you want to flip to pages 60 through 61, it'll kind of show right now existing commercial landscapes around the vicinity. So as you know, that's mostly one of the newest developments across the street. Everything else next door, and if you go a little bit further down, it seems that, you know, our landscaping has been maintained pretty well to still enhance the character of that was there, you know, put in 2012. As far as landscape goes, currently, I think we're trying to seek a variance as far as removing a few trees on the property. Right now, we're going to be removing 5 trees, and a lot of it, as far as keeping the existing trees that are already matured and established. The trees that we are removing, we're going to be replacing with large box trees. So they'll be between 36 to 48 gallon box trees instead of the minimum 15.
Can we go to the proposed landscape plan so we can follow along?
I think it's... So you can see the trees that we're removing are mainly in the drive-through area so we can allow the additional lanes. The ones we're keeping, you can see, which have the circles in the middle. Yeah, staying. And then we have 2 that we're replacing right now. I have a 36-inch box and then also a 48-inch box tree at the exit right there. As far as the areas that we're removing, we have 2 finger planters in the parking lot, and then we also have a finger planter kind of towards the, as you're turning into the entrance of the drive-through and you're coming around the corner, there's a little finger planter that's been removed, but we added additional landscape to the finger or planter on the east side that we're putting an olive tree in. And we added landscape over there because currently there is none right now. And then we're also adding under the canopy another landscape strip, which also replaces the square footage that we're removing as a whole.
Just so it's clear, because I'm not necessarily following, which trees are new or being replaced?
So the trees that are new, there's a gold medallion tree, which is the far east exit. New. And there's another new olive tree right east, right there. 2 olive trees right there. And the reason we're replacing those 2 just is for the configuration of the new drive-through and the parking stall.
So there are 2 new trees?
Correct, yes.
So 1 olive and 1
Yes. And we're keeping the sycamore at the entrance on the west side, and I felt not adding, trees in the entrance, didn't want to create any visibility differences, and we also have the street trees that were remaining too.
Okay, anything else?
Oh, I think to close, we're asking for a waiver in keeping the existing parking lot strip configuration on the east side of the parking lot, which means that we're not proposing any additional planting on the east side with those parking stalls, since there's more than 8 consecutive stalls in a row. As well as the plan is proposed to remove 5 trees, and we're installing 2 large box trees, which is greater than the 15 minimum gallon size per code. Overall, I think the parking lot will have 5 trees instead of the 6. Therefore, and then we will have a few existing trees to remain. So we'll be 1 less tree.
Okay, thank you. If that's it,
I believe that's it.
okay. Then we can open public comment.
All right, thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So first, I wanted to acknowledge that we did receive written correspondence from Rhonda Hobbs and Anna Marie Gott, which was distributed to the board before this meeting. And so then I'll move on to remote public comment. So if any member of the public joining by Zoom would like to speak on item 2, please raise your hand to indicate that you would like to speak, and I will call on you. So at this time, I can see 2 raised hands for this item. So I'm going to go ahead and call on Rhonda Hobbs. Rhonda Hobbs, I sent you an unmute request, and you will have 2 minutes to speak. All right, Rhonda Hobbs, you should be unmuted, and you should be able to talk. All right, so it looks like she might be having some technical difficulties, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next person, and then I'll come back to Ms. Hobbs. So the next speaker is Anna Marie Gott. I'm going to go ahead and send you an unmute request, and you will have 2 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, board members. I just want to reiterate some of the things that I mentioned in my letter today, which is that I don't believe that this project was properly noticed today because there are substantial issues with modifications and waivers that were not even mentioned in the notice. There's also no information regarding CEQA or an EIR. And I mention an EIR because we are going to increase 5-fold the number of cars in a drive-through that is only permitted for 4 or 5 cars. So we're going from 4 or 5 cars to 24. And I believe that is going to require an EIR because of all of the carbon that they will be releasing as they idle for God only knows how long to get their unhealthy fast food. I also want to point out that in 1979, the council made a decision to no longer permit or allow the expansion of a fast food drive-through. I don't know what your definition of expansion is, but I would think that an expansion would encompass a move from 5 to 24 vehicles in a drive-through. And I would like to ask you, do any of you know of another fast food restaurant with a drive-through with this type of configuration? There are none, period, which I find, extremely, burdensome on the community for this applicant to even ask for this type of drive-through. More importantly, though, think about the safety issues for anyone parking in the first lane, if the first parking stalls 1 through 9, or even in the back. There are 2 entrances, one on the right and one on the left side of the building. People are going to naturally try to go to the entrance. And they are going to be walking between vehicles that are running and in gear. That is a safety issue. People do not put their vehicles in park in drive-through lanes.
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
that's a
That is 2
liability
minutes.
for the city.
Thank you very much.
And I'm
And if we can circle back to our other commenter.
Yes, one moment, please. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and call on Rhonda Hobbs again. I'm sending you an unmute request, and once you accept it, you should be able to speak. All right, so it looks like you're unmuted. I don't know. I guess it's still not working, so yeah, maybe we can come back to them at a later time, but I'm gonna go ahead and lower your hand.
Okay, but we did receive written comment from,
Yes, we received written comment from Ms. Hobbs. So then moving on to in-person public comment. Just as a reminder, if anyone wishes to speak, please fill out a speaker slip by the back and bring it to me. But seeing no one, I'll turn it over back to you, Chair Moore.
okay, thank you. We'll close public comment and go to questions. Who would like to start? Ms. Anders? Actually, before we jump in, it might be good for staff to give us an overview of our scope and a little bit more about the landscape waiver that's being requested.
Okay, thank you, Chair Moore. I'm Tony Bauman, Associate Planner. I've been assigned to work on this application, and staff prepared a memo to the ABR regarding the board's purview being constrained to the aesthetics of the project and consistency with guidelines, and not commenting on the operational aspects of the drive-through lanes. So in looking through the Upper State Street guidelines, there's really not much there that's on point or particularly relevant. Just broadly looking at the guidelines, the existing site nicely complies with them because the building's set back and it's got nice landscaping in the front, and the parking lot's in the rear, so it presents a nice street appearance. And then regarding the ABR's guidelines, Section 2 of the ABR guidelines is all about landscaping. And there's a Section 2.2.5 on parking lots. And really, I would say the overall gist of that is the guideline that encourages canopy trees in the interior of parking lots for shade and greenery and aesthetics. But getting to the request for the alternative landscape design, that's where the zoning ordinance, not the guidelines, but the zoning ordinance gets real specific about parking lot landscaping. So where this project doesn't meet the technical standards in the ordinance is regarding the island planters. And those are at the very back of the parking lot. There is a row of existing angled parking spaces head in at the very back of the parking lot. Those are proposed to be replaced with parallel parking spaces, so that row of parking spaces had two intervening angled landscape planters with trees. So we end up with more than 8 parking spaces in a row. So that's the crux of the request for the alternative.
Can we see the
landscape
existing
design.
site plan while he's describing that, please? Yeah. In the
Tony, could you repeat those again while we're looking at the site map?
Sure. This is a demo plan, and it shows demolition of those 2 angled island planters. And those were there to comply with the standard that there not be more than 8 parking spaces in a row without being interrupted by a landscaping planter. So that would be the request for the alternative landscape design, was to have, those 8 spaces are actually going away, and they're being replaced with a row of parallel parking spaces. There's not enough room to add the drive-through lanes and have cars pull in to those spaces and back out. So, and that would, in order to retain some parking back there, they've changed them to parallel parking.
Okay. And is that consistent with zoning ordinance to have
Yeah.
parallel parking?
Right, yeah, and transportation planning's looked at it. It's not a standard for commercial lot in this situation, but transportation planning staff was okay with it. One other thing that's not technically not in compliance, because there's a landscaping standard that says driveways adjacent to on-site buildings must be separated from building walls by a planting area. And on the east side of the building, just to bring your attention to it, it'd be good to see the photograph of the landscaping on the east side of the building, but there's a, if we can go around the corner there and kind of look from where the cars are at the drive-through. There we go. That's a good picture. So you can see that that landscaping that you see there, well, those parking spaces that you see at the far right of that picture would be replaced with new drive-through lanes, and that sidewalk would move all the way up against that wall. But technically, that's not a building wall. Further back where there is that wall, that's like a service area, courtyard, walled-in space. So the sidewalk would be right up against that without any landscaping. So just wanted to bring your attention to that, because that's where a significant amount of the landscaping would change, because the landscaping in the right half of that picture would be replaced with drive-through lanes and sidewalk. And if I counted right, there's 5 trees to remain and 2 to be, 5 removed and 2 to be, no, there's 5 to be removed and 2 to be replaced, and I add up 5 to remain for the parking lot. And the standard for parking lot trees is 1 tree per 5 parking spaces. So the 30 parking spaces would need 6 trees. So technically, having 5 trees instead of 6 would be another little item that would need the alternative landscape design. So, any questions about that stuff?
Yes, I think I'm unclear on which items are in non-compliance. Could we go through those, because I got confused?
Just the lack of the landscaping planters interrupting the row of parking at the rear of the site, and having 5 trees instead of 6 at 5 trees per parking space.
So I thought I heard you say that the parallel parking at the rear of the lot did not met compliance. It didn't meet compliance. Did I hear that wrong?
I think you're right now that I think about it, because that's not 8 spaces in a row as it says.
Right.
So I think you're right now that it's changed. So it would come down to just the number of trees.
Thank you.
Hold on, just for clarification. So if you could introduce yourself, and let's make sure you can be heard.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bronstad with Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck, and I am assisting this team through this process, and I just want to help Tony clarify that it's the east side of the parking lot where we have more than 8 consecutive spaces that we have not proposed a landscape planner within there. We're basically just keeping the way it is now. And the planter areas that we are removing on the southern side is being replaced with 5 parking spaces, so it doesn't actually trigger the need for planter spaces along that curb on the south side. But we do have the new planter area that's going to divide the drive-through lanes and those 5 parallel parking spaces there. And so we're short 1 tree, and we are short a landscape planter on the east side, just to clarify.
Great, thank you.
And Tony, do you agree with what she's just said?
Yes, I think that makes sense. The eastern row of parking is an existing condition, but I guess given the amount of reconfiguring of the landscaping, it's fair to say that wouldn't be a question whether that should be brought into compliance. So I agree with Ms. Bronstein.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Nope?
Well,
Yes.
I'm not sure this is a question I can ask, so if it's not, I guess I'll withdraw it. But it seems like what's happening here is that we're bringing a lot of cars onto the site, more cars onto the site, and making that allowable, but we're not opening it up to let them out of the site. So it seems like that's making some sort of congestion that I don't know whether or not that meets all of the rules.
Well, remember that we're concerned with the aesthetics of it.
So I withdraw my question.
So, okay, let's move on to our questions. Ms. Anderson.
All right, I'll start with the trellis in the back. Can you walk us through the details and what exactly, how it's being constructed?
It is an aluminum metal trellis, not trellis, as a canopy. You're talking about the
Mhm,
canopy in the
yeah.
back, right? Yeah, it's a canopy, not a trellis.
So it's a closed ceiling.
Yes, let me,
Enclosed.
let me go to the color elevations. Basically, that's a rendering of the construction. It's a metal canopy, an aluminum canopy.
Did you consider looking at matching that entry trellis with wood and stucco pilasters?
Not for that over here.
Okay.
So you're
just
talking about the
curious.
trellis that we have in the front over the patio section?
Yeah,
The existing one?
there's two in the front.
Yeah, so that one obviously is more of a wood decorative
Mhm.
for the patio. Bringing that for here for what this canopy will eventually need with, if you can see those like circles, those are like heaters and fans for, as I said, to provide protection for our team members under the canopies.
Okay.
So it would be hard to mimic that on this exterior canopy.
Okay. All right. And then if we can look at a picture of the existing condition on the, yeah, right there. Okay. So you mentioned we are pushing the sidewalk up against that site wall that's holding up the wood. Do you have any other pictures from on the patio looking at it? Like, is there an opportunity to introduce like freestanding planters in there, I guess?
Just look at the pictures right here. You're looking for the front side?
Yeah, I was just curious if you had a picture from that existing service patio entrance.
Feel free to scrub through those photos using those plus, like the up or down arrows just to the left of the numbers too, if you're wanting
Oh,
to.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just that I'm not. There we go. The patio is over here.
So the west side, yeah, service. Oh, wait, go back a couple.
Let me see. The service area is
one
back
more.
here.
Yeah, so where those tables are, so this is, you guys are saying that there's a new sidewalk up against these existing.
The sidewalk will be on this, where
Right,
these bushes are.
okay, so my question was there an opportunity to introduce planters, between the columns or something that's freestanding to still introduce some landscaping, but allow your sidewalk to be up against the wall?
Not really, because that's the access to the building. There is a
Sure.
ramp on the back
Yeah,
going that way.
there's a ramp on the back of that wall.
No, it's a ramp. This is, the sidewalk is going towards the
Okay,
drive-through.
I meant on the
To
other side of
access.
the wall, yeah.
That will be the only
Buildings.
access, pedestrian access from the back.
Okay. I'm not sure my question's clear. Okay.
Let me show you this line.
it's okay, we can.
Chair Moore to Board Member Anderson, feel free to take the controls too if you wanted to illustrate where.
Oh, I see.
So you're going this way. That will be the only axis. Otherwise, you will be
right.
walking
So, okay,
across
so
as-
right
as
where
you
you're
were
at,
saying.
so east of those existing columns, yeah, east of that or in between the columns. It was just a question if we could introduce some planting in there by a planter box, not necessarily in ground. So, anyways, okay. Let's
We
move on.
could reducing the drive-through lanes, but it's will be kind of
No, I'm
very
not
s-
talking about rearranging your lanes or your sidewalk. I'm saying on the
right
building
now
side.
at a minimum, basically.
In the patio, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
right.
all.
Yeah, we'll go on the other side.
In the
I guess we
patio.
could.
Similar to the island on the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry,
between
I'll
the columns,
clarify my
we could.
questions.
That's Actually, yeah, it's a good point.
Okay, and then is there any lighting in that canopy in the back?
Yes.
Is it is it recessed or is it surface mounted?
There is this.
Okay. And then if we can go to the landscape plan, if it's possible. I think it was 12. And then if you can zoom into the east side. Is that an existing, I don't know how to point this out, southeast corner, north of that tree that's existing and staying, is that an existing planter?
This one
East side, other side. Right there,
here.
right at north of that. Is that,
That's an
Nope.
existing.
With the triangle.
yeah, is that
Here,
existing?
There is no tree.
It's existing to remain. So what's in
Okay.
right now is like a Toyo tree. I'm sorry. It's a little smaller tree, and
Okay.
it's staying.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay, those were my questions.
Okay, can you walk us through the menu board? What's being proposed there? What does it look like, et cetera?
Yeah, let me see what page is probably good.
Oh, yeah.
Can I say something else? So the sign committee is going to review the menu board with the signs.
Okay, we want to see what they look like.
Okay, the structure itself, yeah.
Not sure what page is on.
It's in there.
Can you just scroll through?
Let me see.
Oh, I'm not gonna touch it. I feel like something I could touch something, it'll do something. It's better it stays.
And if you want, I can also take over managing the plans. So
I think it's.
Today. Wait, is this the rendering on the this?
That is a rendering.
It's helpful, yeah. Can you describe what those are?
They are aluminum, similar to the.
So this is the exact same material as the canopy, so it's the aluminum material, obviously with our order boards here. Let's see if I can find a picture of it that's better.
page 10 is elevation.
Thank you. There you go. So there's our standard drive-through menu boards. And as Sarah mentioned, obviously, I think this will come back, or a different committee looks at the signs, but this is our standard menu boards that we have.
Okay, so where our purview is the aesthetics of all of these elements that you're adding. So can you describe how you feel this design for the menu board and this awning in the back, how does that work with the existing architecture, materials, et cetera?
Well, I can start, and maybe Tony, you can, Carlos, you can help me as well. I think we can show you our existing canopy, mini boards here. See if I can find a good picture. I don't know if that's right here. I don't know how, like, let me zoom in here. The flagpole's in the way, but this is our standard, or, I mean, obviously when this restaurant opened, I mean, it went through, ARB, or ABR, 10, almost 11 years ago. This was our standard mini board back then. Obviously, this was also our standard color schemes as well, too. And so this design has been updated with our current canopy menu board, which is shown here, which kind of just has a better color scheme that really matches the canopies that we're proposing in the rear of the restaurant over the drive-through. These are all, again, manufactured by our sign company with our menu boards, and it's just really the canopy that's the aluminum and I think it's a dark bronze color that we're using.
Okay, so my question is, how do these designs relate, or how do you feel these relate to the existing building and materials?
I'll let you answer that.
They really don't, I guess. They're metal.
Okay. And then a question on the landscape. If you could, and you had your choice, where would you try and add additional trees on the site?
Are you saying entire site or parking lot?
Parking lot, area of work.
If I could.
Could we look at the landscape?
Let's go back to the landscape plan here.
I mean,
We're adding a portion here, but we cannot add any trees because we're blocking the visibility triangle in these areas.
I'll pose a question then to kind of help. So for instance, in the southeast corner, there's a striped area. What is the function of that striped area if it's no longer parking?
To support the canopy columns.
No, in the southeast corner,
where that
An
existing tree is.
olive tree.
no, there's a striped area in the asphalt area.
Here?
Correct. That used to be a parking space. Is there a function for that striping at this point?
I think it's for the circulation for the car to turn. So if we put a planter there, the car that's parallel would most likely hit the curb trying to go out. But I'm also not designing the site plan.
Okay.
We're not allowed to touch the curb.
You're not allowed
Change
to touch
anything
the
on the
curb?
back.
Okay.
Change
Is that the case, Mr. Bowman?
the curb. This area. We were proposing to revise that.
A better illustration of that proposed change is page 2, so that might also help.
Can we go to page 2, please?
So the reason we're not touching a lot of the area in the back there is due to the Creeks Division. They want us to, because we don't necessarily know the stability of not stability, but the slope in the back there. They want us to minimize how much we touch along that portion. So all we've done is cut out little areas for those grates so we can treat the water that still goes back there, and then just remove those planters to just fill them basically in.
Okay.
Chair Moore, that might be a good opportunity. I can pursue that with staff and get back to the applicant if that would be a change that would be supportable to reduce the
mean,
parking area and increase the
it's-
landscaping area there.
It just seems odd to say you can't touch this curb if it's potentially going to benefit groundwater infiltration.
I can get back to the applicant team.
Okay. So with that in mind, back to the question about additional trees. Is there any other locations on the site that could support additional trees?
As far as the parking lot goes, not really. I can probably put a couple in the frontage, but then that doesn't support the parking lot coverage.
Okay. Those are my questions. Mr. Black, any questions?
How amenable would you be to reconfiguring the angled parking on the eastern boundary there and add a finger planter, which by rights, by parking lot guidelines, should have one? Do we have an opportunity to do that? I know you've removed, just out of curiosity, the total number of existing parking spaces minus, was it 15? How many are there altogether? Just out of curiosity.
Removal of 15 parking spaces.
How many are there now?
I believe he said 30.
Okay, so half are going away.
There's 45
Oh,
right there.
Existing. Proposed is 30.
got it. Well, I see that as an opportunity. I don't know what sort of restraints you have or constraints you have relative to the number of spaces. Obviously, you're losing a lot, so you want to save some. But to me, I know you're looking for a waiver on the parking and finger planters, but I think that would be an opportunity in my mind. What would be your response to that? Not unlike what you have on the western side. You've got, what, 4 or 5 spaces in a finger planter. Oh, sorry. I pointed out on
Yeah,
the,
so
on the western
we-
boundary, you've
Yeah.
got,
We certainly can.
Yeah, I think,
Borough Park.
yeah, we can look into reconfiguring, I guess it would be parking stalls 10 through 15. The parallel stalls, maybe shifting some things down and seeing if we could squeeze some sort of a tree between, I guess it would be maybe 12 and 13, or however it gets shifted and reconfigured in the back. We could see if we can squeeze a tree somewhere.
I'm looking at, 27, 20, 25, 26, 27.
Oh,
and
that's where you're, okay, I'm sorry, I thought you were
I'm
referring down
talking
to the
about a
bottom.
finger planter there, in that vicinity, if that's possible. And by rights, they should have one.
So again, we can look into something and see if we can
Okay.
make it, kind of reconfigure the parking stalls and see how it looks.
Okay. So I have another question too, if you don't mind. So am I to understand, because I saw in your planting plan that the whole frontage along State Street, which is fine, is all the existing material coming out and it's going to be completely replaced? Okay. I don't see the, and you'll accommodate the ground sign, which it doesn't show up on your plan, but I'm assuming that that'll be addressed.
Correct.
So. Is there opportunity for planting in and around the, I don't know about trees, but is there planting around the trash enclosure area down in the southwestern corner?
It's existing, so it'll stay.
Okay.
Yeah, on the back of the trash enclosure is existing, and then I think on 2 sides, or 1 side, on the more west-north side of it is new. So just a little bit is new, but a lot of it's just, we're not touching.
And then all along where you're proposing the parallel parking, that's where that hedge is?
Correct.
So that obviously remains, so,
Mhm.
okay. No other questions right now?
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Noon?
I apologize to be redundant here, but can you confirm, are you overparked?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I had for now.
Okay, Mr. Olson?
I just had that one inappropriate question.
Okay. Well, then, if there's nothing else, let's move to comments. Who would like to start?
I can start. I think there's a theme over the concern of landscaping, and certainly if you're overparked, I think an effort should be made to add additional landscaping, as has been mentioned along that. It looks like 21 through, I believe, 30. The angle parking, I think the other board members have mentioned it in their question already, to adding a finger there. Also, anywhere, I think, as it was mentioned in the beginning, landscaping around the other side of the building at the entrance, adjacent to the drive lanes. If it can, just a little bit can be squeezed in there, perhaps. So just in general, additional landscaping. As far as the aesthetics and the structure itself that you have proposed, I don't know that I would be in support of it as designed. Just this big metal canopy. It doesn't relate to the building. It is on the back side of the building, but I don't see that it relates to the building really in any way. Color, material. I think that needs work. And those are my comments for now.
Okay, thanks. Who's next?
Well, I would reiterate those comments as well. I mean, I'm seeing a situation where a lot of landscape is being removed, particularly at the entrance there with these added travel lanes. And there's really, I mean, where there is a existing landscape along that area, that sort of west-facing elevation, just goes to what Mr. Noon has indicated. Is you need to look and see what other opportunities there are to try to add square footage of landscaping, in my mind. And then also, we've already talked about the opportunity for maybe an additional finger planter on the eastern parking area there. I think more landscape would really contribute to the success of this proposal. That's all.
Okay. Anything to add?
I'm in agreement with these comments.
Same. I would just add, when you study the canopy, to look at possibly just breaking it up so it's not such a monolithic shape. And like Mr. Noon said, look at materials that would coincide with the existing architecture.
Okay. Yeah, and I agree with those comments. I think if you're pursuing a landscape waiver or alternative design, then I think we need to see that there's some additional effort coming from the applicant to offset that as much as possible. So I would encourage you to really take a hard look at the layout and see where else you can find areas for planting. Okay.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
I have a question for the board, or also a clarification. So the canopy, the menu order board canopies are under the purview of the ABR, but the signs that are attached to them would go to the sign committee. So I don't know if you wanted to offer any comments on the design of the canopies.
Well, I think what's been mentioned, I think would go, is sort of also impacts the menu canopies themselves as far as materiality, etc. Not the menu boards, but the structure that they're hung from. So I think that's accurate, what I'm saying. Okay. Does somebody want to craft a motion? project?
I'll give it a shot.
Great.
Let's see, so this would be in a continue indefinite.
Indefinite continuance. Yeah.
So I will make a motion that will be continued indefinite. The board finds that the project as designed is deficient in landscaping. We would want to see you come back with additional landscaping, in particular along between spaces 21 through 30 to add a finger planter. And then just in general, any other landscaping area, square footage that can be added to the site. In general, the board was not in support of the canopy as far as the size, material, and color. And that would also apply to the structure of the menu boards themselves, not the menu board, of course, but just the structure holding them. Anything else? I think that's...
Do you want to be specific about adding trees? You mentioned landscaping.
Yeah, we could include that if that's what the board would like to add that with additional landscaping, including additional trees
Where it's feasible.
where feasible.
Okay. And it's okay to be, it's a little bit, study this
Mm-hmm.
at this point because they're still, trying to figure it out. So they can come back to us with what they propose.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that I want to change anything that was said so far, but just continue to study additional opportunities for landscaping.
I'll
Okay.
second the motion.
And then,
Seconded by Black. Any discussion?
pardon my interruption as well, but we would need to make, just because it's kind of we need to make project compatibility findings as well. We don't necessarily need to, but I don't know if you could speak to those 6 points. It might help the next phase of review, because this has to go up to, I believe, Planning Commissioner, City Council, so
So it's going there next.
it's going there next. And I don't know if you want to weigh in as well, Mr. Baumann, but it would be helpful if PC, or project compatibility findings, would also be made for this project. It's not typically done, obviously, for concept review, but if you guys could just walk through those 6 as well.
Sure, or if
Yeah.
you could just generally say how the project does or doesn't comply at this point with the project compatibility findings, that'd be helpful if we had that in the minutes. Because you're ultimately going to need to make the findings when the project's here for approval. So it'd be good to offer some conceptual comments regarding those criteria.
I don't know. I mean, it seems like our motion should summarize the general feeling that we have at this point. I don't think we're at the point where we could get to that level of detail. It seems premature to do that.
Okay.
So that's my feeling.
No, I
Unless
agree.
you're-
I agree. I agree with that. Yeah, I find it hard to do that.
Okay, so we had a first and second. Let's read that back, and maybe that'll generate any discussion.
Sure. So the motion was to continue indefinitely with the following comments. Number 1, the board finds that the project as designed is efficient in landscaping. The board would like to see additional landscaping, in particular between spaces 21 through 30, and consider adding a finger planter. In general, continue to study any additional landscaping areas that can be added, including trees. And number 2, in general, the board is not in support of the canopy in terms of size, material, and color. And this would apply to the structure holding the menu boards as well.
Okay, in the first sentence, can you repeat that?
Yes. The board finds that the project as designed is efficient in landscaping.
So that should be deficient.
Deficient. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is that accurate?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any discussion? No? No? Okay, let's vote.
All right, so I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
and Board Member Olson.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and with that, we can adjourn our meeting for this evening. Thank you very much.